You're listening to the Veteran Etc. podcast, as there's always more to be said about a veteran. Join your host, Mike Kim, a veteran, ex-monk, seasoned war trauma therapist, and writer, as he shares his years of research in veteran readjustment culture and the meaning of warrior life. Now, here's your host, Mike Kim.
Veteran Etc. This is a show basing itself on veteran culture and veteran readjustment culture. On this show, we look at the daily lives of veterans and those in the military. What are the things they read? What are the cereals they eat? Kidding. What are the movies that they look at? What are just the things that inspire them as they wake up and what they think about when they go to bed? On this show, we've got two highly prized people in my life, Erik Uhlik and Marco Gutierrez, and hopefully Bud Hackett will be joining us. He's feeling ill, but yeah, all you guys who didn't attend and listening, I'm gonna write you guys up, because I can, at least in my mind. But anyway, today is a special episode dealing with Veterans Day. It's coming up on Friday, November 11th, and I was going to have 10 shows on the Marine Corps birthday to annoy Erik, but I chose not to because Erik and we went to high school together, and he was kind of like an older brother then, but more now, ironically enough, since our military service. And before I introduce Marco, I just want Erik to say a couple things about his life and his service. And just, I've always been impressed with him on many levels as a warrior and as a humanitarian. Erik.
Thank you, Mike. I've known Mike since high school. We kind of grew up together. He's a couple years younger than me, but we met on the wrestling team, and then we joined the military brotherhood, and we've been lifelong friends on and off. But we reconnected recently after my 20 years of service, and I retired. We connected and through Facebook, and it's been a great time catching up and doing these shows to help veterans out whenever we can.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I will also add that Erik and I share the same sleeping patterns as well as the same eating patterns. And so, yeah, that's how we do veteran readjustment. Kind of like a Backstreet Boys song, we do it our way. But
right.
Marco, the man, the legend, the former legendary VFW post Astoria. What is the Moretto? I say this because I love that post. I mean, I hate veteran organizations. I shouldn't say that, but I make an exception for that one, But no, I don't really hate veteran organizations. I'm just I just get overly sensitive. But anyway, I always feel the love at the post where Marco is a part of, and what he served as president. But anyway, I'll shut up about my commentary on VSOs and let Marco describe himself.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Marco Gutierrez, former Marine, also former commander of the VFW 2348, Rocco Moretto, in Astoria, Queens. That's a bit of veteran advocate since I became a veteran myself.
Yeah.
Just did my 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then I was a private military contractor. I met Mike about, let's say, roughly a little bit over a decade ago. At that VFW, and I'm slowly getting into more veteran advocacy, and being a commander of a veteran service organization, of a post at least. You come across different issues that the members have, and you become a source, a resource rather, to other veterans. And it's been a journey, to learning about different issues affecting people, and whenever I can help, whenever I can answer questions, I do.
It's great. And, so that leads me on to point out, since it's Veterans Day, I mean, it's great to find out where the nearest Applebee's is for Veterans Day, and all my, how cheap I am. I want all the discounts. So that's great. And, I'll go on another show to get that info. But I just wanted to find out, like, what, as far as, like, because you guys are very aware of, like, veterans issues out there, what would you say are just like some veteran issues that we can talk about that are, like, pressing our community?
Well, so coming from Florida, we have a lot of homeless down here, and I think it's nationwide. I think it's worldwide. We have homeless people, but I was recently thinking to myself, the Daytona Beach VA has a really good outreach program, and they know where the homeless hang out through word of mouth from other people, and they try to hunt down the veterans and get them help. They'll actually contact them one on one and find out if they're a veteran. If they're a veteran, they'll bring them into the VA and try to get them some free dental work, some medical care, the basics. They'll try to help them get some vocational training, try to find them a job, and find them a place to live. Now, some of them are mentally unstable and can't handle that, can't handle all that. But they try to help them out any way they can. But what I was thinking about recently in Florida was the hurricane, and there's a lot of veterans out there that are homeless, and we had a ton of flooding on the east coast of Florida. And so if anybody knows of a veteran that's in need, maybe help them out and reach out to them and see if you can get them to the VA. Sometimes they may not want to go, but try to help them out, get them to the VA and get them some help that they need, especially right after the hurricane that we just had a few weeks ago.
Well said.
That's one of the things I was thinking about.
Yeah. What Marco, what as far as your thoughts on what's been happening with the homeless in this area, any comments? I kind of know of, like, a couple years ago, but I really haven't been that connected with the homeless work that's being done with veterans now. Are you knowledgeable on any of that?
Not too privy. I mean, here in New York City, it's homelessness is a whole different animal. It's a whole different outreach. It's a little different ballgame. They're not contained. They're everywhere. Recent changes over the past couple of years have exploded homelessness and migration and whatnot. It's a little hard to get a handle on everyone.
Yeah, I found that at one point, and maybe Marco was aware of this, but in Brooklyn there was, for decades, and it was started by the Vietnam vets, and I kind of feel bad because I didn't invite, maybe I invited Brian and I didn't keep up with him. He's out in the West Coast. He's like he's like an incredible actor, Brian Dellett. He was like in the Truman Show, and he was in Shawshank Redemption, and he was like, and when you see his face, you'll know who it is. He's been in a lot of movies, but he's a friend, and he's a veteran advocate, and he comes on the show periodically. But I would have wanted to have, a Vietnam vet like him to say a couple words, because he knows, like, that veteran homelessness, like, really came up front and center with, like, the Vietnam vet, and then our community, a veteran, Global War on Terror vets and stuff, and Cold War vets. Like Eric and I are both of those communities. And the thing is that the they cut that program out. You know, that was like one of the first veteran homeless programs in the country, and the VA, I don't know if they Project Torch. I don't know if they divided it into different areas or what, but it's not like where it was in downtown Brooklyn, where all the homeless vets knew where to go. They could get like a shower, they could get food, they could, it was a multi-service center. They could work on their claim, they could get mental health. There was even like a weight room there, you know.
Hmm.
Um, Project Torch was there, and then they cut it out maybe a couple years ago. And I don't know what they did, but there's something about outreach, what you were saying, Eric, that I think is important. And I didn't notice it when I was even working back in the 90s with veterans, and I was doing mostly like private outreach with private shelters going out to help veterans. But I never noticed, one thing I never noticed anyone from the VA like going out like in vans or anything, reaching out to like the homeless community um, on the streets. And I just think, maybe
Well,
federal programs could get more into that.
yeah, that have definitely have to be some kind of federal incentive because it's a federal agency. It's not a city. They don't see it as a problem. I don't know how the bureaucracy is working on how the paperwork
Mhm.
is going to work out on that aspect. But that's what comes to mind is funding.
Yeah. Now I was noticing in that, that new legislation with the Vet Act of 2022 that got passed with um, House of Rep, but I think it's going up for the Senate. But there was very little mentioned on homelessness. But you're right. It's since it's like a epidemic with civilians. So every time something's like harsh in the civilian sector, it's harder, it seems like, with the veteran sector. So it's just interesting that there hasn't been that much attention placed on homeless veterans.
Well, I think they're so hard to find. That's the biggest thing. You've got such a huge homeless community, especially I would imagine in New York is just unbelievable. Any of the big cities, the homeless issue is huge. Um, I mean, they're hard to find here in the Daytona area. I couldn't even imagine New York. Uh, and every community is different, not only size, but our northern community versus southern community. The needs in the northern communities, I think, are there's a lot more need for outreach because of the winter months. The winter months, people die. Summer too. I mean, the heat kills people too, but I don't think as much as the cold. Um, but I think the hardest part of the outreach program is actually reaching the veteran because the homeless community, especially in the last couple of years with everything that's happened with COVID and all the other stuff, inflation and people losing their homes and everything. We're kind of in a unique situation that we haven't seen since the 70s, and the economy's just taking a dump on everybody. Um, so I would imagine that the homeless community is a lot larger than it used to be a couple of years ago. So it's going to be difficult to reach those people. We just have to kind of keep our eyes open and look out for them and ask questions. Hey, are you a vet? You need help? That's the biggest thing.
I know for certain that the New York State has a whole veterans department, and New York City has like a veterans office. I don't hear enough of their advocacy. I don't think they're aggressively getting out there. I hardly know about them. I work for the state too. I hardly know of their programs.
Yeah.
As a vet, as all the vets, we're not hearing about these programs. Then much less is somebody that's homeless, somebody that's in need. We're keeping our ears out open to hearing these kind of news, and I'm not hearing anything. So that's just for me, that's just a way to funnel more taxpayer money, fund
Yeah,
their offices, and little, we see little results
yeah.
from the government.
Even what you said about the city and state that back in when I did work in Brooklyn and I noticed that program, my sister actually worked at Project Torch. I was part of the vet center that was like on the floor below it. They shared that building on Tillery Street. But on one of the floors was a city welfare public assistance office, and they had a section of it. And this was started like in the 70s actually, of
Hmm.
public assistance. It was like for veterans, if you needed public assistance, you know, welfare, then instead of going to a regular welfare office, you could go here and they would
Right.
process your claim there.
Hmm.
And I just think I haven't heard about, I don't even know if they still exist, but I just think, wow, that was done in the 70s, you know what I mean? And Project Torch was done, like in the 80s or something. Like what what has, yeah, that, like what you said, like it's an interesting thing that has happened.
Yeah, I think as you know, I don't want to say that we've been forgotten, but there are a lot of other priorities and personal agendas um, from politicians nowadays. And when you bring everybody home from Afghanistan, everybody thinks it's all over. It's not over. Now we've got to deal with the whiplash. We've got to deal with all these soldiers coming home. And I mean, I think your title for this show is "Coming Home Well." Is that right?
Well,
That's
that's the sponsor for the they sponsor they sponsor veteran, etc. They have like a TBI show. There's like a CTE show. They're just doing, there's like 10 different shows on family and vets, on, they do a lot of great stuff, coming home well.
yeah. And I'm um, I'm I'm not ashamed to say that I didn't come home well.
Yeah.
Um, I had some mental issues. I still do. Some physical issues, which are minor compared to the mental issues. I have a lot of anger and a lot of anxiety. But that's another issue is not only homelessness but mental health um, for our vets. A lot of people don't realize that. I mean, PTSD is not just a wartime um, byproduct. It's not a byproduct of war. It's military sexual. It's sexual assault, whether it's military or not. It's sexual assault. Their PTSD is from that. I mean, people have PTSD from many different things, accidents, muggings, whatever. You can all that stuff brings it on. And I did not come home well, and I'm adapting over time, but it's taken me many years to figure that out. So our vets do need, not only do we need to reach out to the vets, but they need to reach out for themselves. They need to say, hey, it's okay not to be okay. And, hey, I need some help. And, where do I get that? And how do I go about it?
Yeah,
They need,
I think, Eric, what you're saying is valid, because I was reading the this Veterans Act of 2022, and it's just like, one, I think it misses the message regarding homeless vets, the urgency, but it also misses, what type of like transitional housing, what type of mental health, like concrete mental health issues are going to be addressed through this act, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to just hire a bunch of people, give a budget to hire more people. Like, what are you doing to, create better programs? And I think that's, even when I was working for the VA, I noticed that. Do you have anything to say, Marco, on some of that? And then,
Yeah, mental health is I'm a big mental health champion. I'm been something I've been working on myself since I got out, and I think it's relatively new in the field how to treat it. And I think that I don't want to say guinea pigs, but I think just the science community, the medical community, we're all learning as this goes on how to better treat it, and from medications to therapy, it's just in its infancy, and hopefully it keeps on growing, and the research is continuous. I know from the the incredible amount of deceased friends that I have who were on medication cocktails from the VA. Maybe that wasn't the right cocktail. You know, it seems to be
Yeah.
a couple of medicines that are in common there that end up with that same result. And then there's other experimental or not FDA approved results that are not FDA approved medications that have much better results, and the VA is not touching them. So I think there's definitely a lot of issues there with mental health. And how do we move forward? I don't know if it's whoever's in office or what their agenda is, but it's hard to say that it's that the betterment of the veteran is always at the forefront of whoever decides what the next move is in mental health, because it just seems like it's what works better for the pharmaceutical companies and whoever's pockets.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer of that.
Yeah, that 100%. Whatever makes money. And we need to switch that agenda.
yeah, there's no doubt that has been going on. And I think that, like you said, the treatments are unfolding, but at the same time, like I'm a big fan of like ancient treatment, not ancient, but like treatments that were done like in the early 1900s, like traditional long-term talk therapy. It doesn't,
Yeah.
just let it happen, man. So what if the person's going to be there for 20 years? Like don't put any pressure on the process. Everybody heals the way they want to heal. So the thing is that these administrators, they don't tell us about all of these like ancient medical, there's like these treatments with flowers to help people with like different aromatherapies that were used, and they were not like how can I say, like hippie stuff that I'm into, but they were just like kind of like part of like European culture, through nutrition. That's what, like, in the I think that the first medical oath or code, ethical code, it was like, no, Socrates, I think he said, like, heal, or Galen, the first like medical doctor who set up the oath, heal yourself through food. There's all these different things that you're saying. It's true, like that it's all unfolding, like a lot of the new stuff. But it's because what I'm adding in is that it's because they're denying to look at a lot of things that have helped, like even ancient cultures that deal with like
Yeah.
war and all that, and previous generations here in the West.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we can learn from. Stuff that's been forgotten that we need to bring back. And there's a lot of matter of fact, there's a company here in Daytona. Every Thursday they do free acupuncture for vets. Yeah, they do free acupuncture for PTSD therapy. So if you're a vet in the Daytona area, there's a right downtown. I'll have to get the name of them. I don't have it offhand.
I'll put it in the comments once you send it to me, and then I'll put it in the comments.
But they do a thing that's called combat acupuncture, and it's all in the ears.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and they put these needles in your ears, and then after a week or two, they fall out on their own. And it's supposed to help you. And every other week or every week, you can go in there and get it done for free. So it's a local center.
And that's near actually the vet center downtown in Daytona. So if you need to go to the vet center, that's also like good location too to receive that acupuncture possibly.
Yep. And also, there's another place. It's Palmer Chiropractic. If you're a disabled vet, they'll see you for free.
It's great.
There's a lot of therapeutic groups at the VA that I know of. So I'm
Mhm.
always constantly looking, whether they're guitar, art driven, or music, yoga. They're during
Yeah,
the day though. They're during business hours. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to access that, and other vets that are working during normal business hours won't be able to access them. But that's at the Manhattan VA, uh, the Man Harbor Healthcare System, or I think it's called.
mhm.
Um, I'm pretty sure some of the vet centers have their own individual programs too.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great thing. So activities are also a way to wellness, right? As well as these new unfolding treatments coming out from the medical field, right? Can be beneficial to veterans transitioning, right? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you're at that point where you're willing to trade in old habits and adopt something new, it's crucial. It's a great opportunity, and usually they're all funded, and it's nothing out of pocket. So it's a great
That's
opportunity to socialize as well.
that's right. Yeah.
And there's actually, and I'm just tapping into everything in my local area, but your local area may have something. Daytona Beach, it used to be Daytona Beach Community College. It's called Daytona State College right now. They're a 4-year degree school. But they have once a week, they have veterans art classes. And I believe it's no expense out of pocket. You just go in there and they have an art class, whether it's watercolor or pottery or whatever, and you can go in there and get some therapy through art. Uh, and any local area may have something similar to that if you check into it. And Mike knows I keep myself busy with projects. I was actually putting up cabinets and doing electrical
You
work
do a
this
good
week.
job. Yeah,
So
I love going on his Facebook because I think of just think of like my dad and actually Eric 2 years ago had to help me out because I was trying to help my dad and it was just it was like a freaking doomsday mission at my dad's place. But at least I like looking at Eric's projects that he has because he'll you'll get through them. They look like at first they look like impossibilities, but then you'll get away. I mean, you'll get at them and you'll see through them. And yeah, I think I asked if I could rent your little apartment there, for part of the year, right?
yeah,
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 it's really nice. I spent some time there. I liked it.
yeah.
You have
It's a
you have your kids though that are that go there several times.
Oh yeah, my kids and my grandkids, they'll come and visit and they'll stay there in the guest house. And it's free occasionally, but if
Yeah,
you're ever in the area, you're always welcome here, your family. So
yeah,
just hop on in and we'll have a place for you to stay.
yeah. No. I've always felt your generosity and stuff like that. But I was giving you a compliment because I was like, hey man, this I might as well see if he'll sign a lease because it's a nice little apartment there. Uh,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a nice place.
So yeah. So that's the thing that I'm trying to encourage that I think we are saying that we're speaking the same language as far as these wellness projects, that it doesn't just have to deal with medication, but like the different projects. We both, all three of us ride motorcycles. And
Yeah,
I was glad that, you were, so Eric was really cool because I was getting really impatient because I thought, I was the master rider and it was like I ended up just buying this bike without even, it was like a great deal. And I was really embarrassed because like the clutch, it wasn't a wire clutch. And a guy who's like another guy like Erik is he actually rode like on like on a team, and he's like, dude, it's because it's not a wire clutch. It's like you're just used to wire clutches, and this is what is it? Is it a hydraulic clutch that was on that BMW motorcycle?
Yeah, I think it was hydraulic.
Yeah,
Like wet versus dry.
yeah, and it was just kicking. It's really kicking my ass, and I was getting really embarrassed. And I was thinking, I have to drive to see my son like 2,000, 3,000 miles on that bike. And not only that, even though I look young, I'm 54 years old, dude. And on that bike, that bike was, I forgot, it was like the BMW, what was it, RS 1150 or something, 1200. And it was supposed to be BMW's first hybrid kind of like touring race bike, but that shit wasn't like a hybrid. That was like, that was just like, because you saw me on there. I was having back problems, you know, and so Erik was like really kind enough to get his bike, which I really love. It's the what Harley is it?
It's
It's
a
a military look model.
Yeah, it's the military edition. It's a 2016 Fat Boy Lowrider Softail Slim with
Yeah,
the military paint job, and it's pretty cool. It's like OD green, but it's got a little
Yeah.
sparkle to it, and it's got the big military star on the side. It's a cool
yeah.
bike. I like
So
it.
So yeah, so he was helping me out with just like we were riding, and then I was like, man, I need to do like parking lot work and stuff like that. And then he was like, yeah, it's cool, we'll do it. And I said, if you tell anybody, I'll deny it. But we're just like, and I'm just like, dude, I need to get rid of this bike. It's just like this bike is just I'm not gonna make it 2,000 miles, and it's just not my style. So I got rid of it, and that's why I got like the Triumph Scrambler. But
Which is a
I'm saying all that is because you were with me during that difficult time, and it's like vets helping vets and stuff like that. Um, yeah, so you
we
were
also,
helping
we
me
also
out.
did a ride too. We did a ride down Main Street
Yep,
together, and that's
that's
kind
right.
of like
I'm
it's another way for therapy. You get together with other people and go out for a motorcycle ride and take your mind off things.
for 4th of July.
I think it was 4th of July, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was good.
on
They
Main
had all
Street.
the vet orgs there. It was nice. Yeah, I'm glad you invited me to that. That was good.
Yeah,
I
we
was
had a good.
afraid, man, that I was gonna like that clutch was gonna go out like on Main Street, because Main Street, that's like all the history, Hell's Angels, that's like a big spot,
Yeah, Boot Hill
I,
Saloon, all that.
yeah, Buddha Hill Saloon, all that. And I just thought I'd freaking, because I had that bike. But I good memories. What would you say, Marco, in regards to your riding experience with vets? What do you think it's done for you?
Saved my life. It helped save my life. At that time, it helped help me get away from my thoughts and whatever other stressors. In a semi-healthy way. Um, I mean, I couldn't be I couldn't be really inebriated while I'm riding, or lose control of my bike. And during those times, at first, I took better care of that bike than I did myself. I cared more for that bike than I cared about myself, and I wanted to keep it preserved and well. So that the long rides, the talking amongst like-minded people or people with shared experiences, that also helped. Because I didn't really encounter that when I was a student or at the workplace. That was really like the only place where I had other vets where I could talk to, and we're sharing the wind as well. So it was very, very helpful. It was very fun. Good times. They still are.
Great. That's great. That's great. And then he switched to a chopper. He got a chopper, right? You got a chopper. What was the reasoning? We did a show. Erik. We're gonna do a bio show in the future of you. We've been planning on that, but Marco was available, so we popped on with the show, and then he just said, "Oh, I got a chopper," and then it's like, okay, the end, you know. Um, so explain the chopper thing because we couldn't finish.
And it kind of just fell in my lap. It was an opportunity I couldn't refuse.
Okay, cool.
Um,
I like that. I like that. I like that. That's all right.
yeah.
That's all right. And then what do you so the other thing is, a couple other things, in the veteran community that I'm noticing is and you actually mentioned it, Marco, yourself, but and I've noticed it, and Erik, you have as well, but like these organizations that just they may not be like, they may seem like veteran service organizations, but they may not be, and they may just be private like businesses, but they're focused on like trying to help veterans get their disability claims. And there's almost like a grift going on with some of these groups, or I should say most of these groups, like not the veteran service agencies. I'm talking about these other like um I don't know, mysterious groups that are popping up.
I feel they're predatory businesses. It's like the car dealerships outside of bases. And there's amazing rates that they have for service members. 21%, 30%, crazy rates. They'll take advantage of people. And I recently had a friend asking. He's been out for quite some time. Been out like about 15 years, and he's just now gonna file for some disability benefits. And it's a lot of paperwork, and the paperwork gets overwhelming sometimes. I'm not that's something that I could relate to, because I feel like that at times. When it comes to myself, when it comes to my family, I could handle somebody else's paperwork, but just my own, it's a little overwhelming. And I sought out a veteran service organization to help me with my claim, because I didn't know where to start. And the paperwork is pretty transparent. There's a process where you have to get medical. You have to go to different doctors, and there's actual legit organizations. The big name ones, the legit organizations. They don't charge you anything. They help you, explain to you the process of what you have to do, and they guide you along. And then there's these predatory services out there that I just want to make a buck, and whatever they charge, they give you that song and dance about wanting to help you. But of course, there's a cost either on the front end or on the back end. When it is offered for free, I just can't agree with it. It's like charging people at a soup kitchen.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
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 There's Salvation Army. They do a lot of good things. And they have expenses to cover, and I don't know how accurate this is, but I've been told by people that are homeless that it costs like $17 a night to stay in the shelter. And I'm like, well, that's not what a shelter's all about. You shouldn't have to pay for it. I mean, if they're truly reaching out to the community, I mean, why is it $17 a night to stay? Like I said, they got costs to cover, but I don't understand that. And then, I look at Wounded Warrior too. They do a lot of good things. They have a lot of weekend activities for people, but I've seen, the boxes on counters in stores where it's a Wounded Warrior rubber bracelet and they're $1 donation. But if you look at the small print on the box, it says 10% of all purchases between this date and this date goes to Wounded Warrior. So you're paying $1 for this bracelet, but only 10 cents actually goes to Wounded Warrior. And then it's only for a 2-week span. And that box is sitting on the counter for 8-9 months. Well, only 2 weeks did 10 cents go to Wounded Warrior. Then it's 100% profit for the company who's put out these Wounded Warrior things. And I don't know if it's Wounded Warrior or a private company, but really almost no money is going to Wounded Warrior. It's going into somebody's pocket. So you have to watch out for these predatory companies that are just trying to make a quick buck. When they say they're helping people, they're really not. So everything you do, you have to look at closely.
But I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's true. We just get caught up with the spectacle of the word veteran or Iraq or Afghanistan, and we're more than willing to give, but we recognize that, not all these charities or these different, sales are actually going to benefit veterans, or the military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's global, and it's not just veterans organizations. I mean, there's other organizations that do the same thing. Oh, we're helping out the firemen, or oh, we're helping out the police. No, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then interesting issue is the 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 PAC Act. I mean, the burn pits and all that. Like, I find it interesting because everyone's talking about the burn pits, but at the same time, that legislation is like so important, because it's also helping. It can help Vietnam veterans and Persian Gulf War one vets, as far as getting the medical care that they need. So it's not just for Iraq and Afghanistan vets.
I've
Just
been personally touched by family members that were in Vietnam and who have been exposed to Agent Orange and have cancers and all kinds of other problems. And it's difficult. A lot of those vets were denied at first, but if it comes to fruition, then they can get the help they need, get the money they need, because a lot of those people, they haven't been able to work for decades because they're affected in a major way, and they do need help. And oftentimes they may be able to get back pay to help live a better life and get medical care that they need where they were denied before. So it's something that can help out quite a bit across the full spectrum, from beginning to end.
It's just sad that it takes someone like Jon Stewart to make, like, a huge rant for politicians to get to be afraid and sign off on it. That should just be like automatic. I'm reading what the VA is saying about the PAC Act, and they're saying, just no brainer stuff. Like, we don't need like I appreciate Jon Stewart for doing it, but it's a sign of like our society. Like, why does it, why, why are these politicians holding off on what? Because it expands and extends eligibility for health care for veterans with toxic exposures and veterans of Vietnam, Gulf War, and post 9/11 eras. It adds 20 plus more presumptive conditions for burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic exposures. Adds more presumptive exposure locations for Agent Orange and radiation. It's just ridiculous that it takes this highly controversial comedian to kind of advocate for us, which I don't care, but still it shows where we're at as a society.
Well, for me, when somebody, man or woman, is willing to sign on the dotted line and put their life on the line to do whatever they need to do to protect the country, and for a lot of us, it's just so that we can find employment and have a job, but we're willing to stick our neck out there, and promises have been made to us that we're going to be taken care of should anything go wrong. And right now, this is bottom line. It's dollars and cents, and people don't want to sign off on it because it's going to be a huge expense, but it's the right thing to do. And I'm not against certain social programs, but you can't, I don't know, that to me, and I'm biased in that I served, but the veteran who's willing to put their life on the line for everybody should be taken care of before. And I'm not saying that we should deny people in need of in any way.
Right. But I don't. I get what you're saying. But what's sad about it is that even the Republicans are not signing off on this. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, it's a huge expense. It's a dollar thing, dollar and cents, and it's maddening to me because it's a no-brainer. I mean, they should sign off on this regardless, because we've all
both Democrats too.
we've all stepped into the fire and said, "Hey, I'm here," and promises were made, and now they don't want to. They want to either deny that we were exposed to something in any way, or just say, "Hey, we're not gonna allow this law to pass because we can't afford it." Well, we can afford it, but we may have to cut back on other social programs to do it.
Social programs, Eric, and this is where at times you
cut out. I couldn't hear you. You cut out.
Oh, well, you get me excited because the hippie in me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the hippie in me wants to say, why cut other social programs? Cut on the military budget, which is $1 trillion. We're not even in. We're sending. I know what you're saying about like these other programs, but we're sending 50 billion to Ukraine. And they're going into weapons. We got $1 trillion military budget. I mean,
I agree.
I'm not a peace freak or anything, but I'm just a half a freak. And it's like, I don't understand the logic,
I get you. We can cut the budget in a lot of places other than social programs. So I mean, we've got a lot of things going on, and I don't need to know the mating process for the dung beetle. We don't need to, things like that.
Yeah. I get what you were saying.
We don't need to fund stupid things like that. So like cut some of that stuff out, and then to me, I mean, I'm all about helping people out when they're in need. And I lean to the right when I walk. I'm kind of I wouldn't call myself a Republican. I'm for what makes the most sense.
Yeah. No, you're not saying anything out of,
But
I'm not trying to virtue signal you. I was just saying,
I get it.
Like what is, we could do
do a lot better in how we spend our budget.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I guess the point that I was trying to make is that it's sad that both of these politicians with their agendas regarding the budget are not passing it. You know what I mean? One way or another, whether it's an expense or not, they're not passing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing. They're not passing it. And even the other act, the 22 Act for Senate that should be immediate. You know what I mean?
For sure.
They put the Veteran Act, the other act in January. I was reading January this year. So why does it have to wait until until next year before it gets anything, or what? Are they expecting it like in December to pass the Senate? Yeah.
I don't know. It's maddening, like I said, for me. I don't know how Marco feels about it, but it's maddening for me.
Yeah, Marco. Yeah, I'll shut up. And if anybody's listening, know that I respect everyone's position, and it was only directed more at the policy makers for not passing it, and so I wasn't correcting Erik as far as who prefers what, but I'm mostly annoyed that the politicians are holding it back.
Yeah, no, I don't think I think it's probably not gonna be passed until they find out how it's gonna benefit them, how both sides of these parties are gonna benefit from whoever these fat cats are, whoever's driving the pharmaceutical industries, whoever's driving the war machines, all these profiteers. Once they figure out how we can get all these veterans and profit off of these lawsuits and profit off of these new claims, then it'll get passed. I'm very cynical about the government's actual interest in veterans and anybody, any small groups, any underrepresented groups, having their best interests at heart. I think it's all money driven. I think it's always been money driven. I think it's going to continue to be money driven. And I think it's just masqueraded as, oh yeah, let's care about the vet. Oh, let's get these veterans benefits. Oh, Camp Lejeune and toxic water, and I don't think anybody really cares. I really don't. I think that the victims care. I think maybe the small local politicians may care to an extent, but I think the big wigs. I think it's just a game. It's just a game to throw at people, and it's all just financial gains here and financial gains there. I think that numbers are manipulated. I don't think it has anything to do with budgets. I think it's all just a big charade. I'm very disillusioned from just what I've seen firsthand of my experience in being involved in war and what's been reported and what was the actual truth. I can't make no heads or tails of it other than there's something diabolical or something more to it. And the only thing I can think of is money. Just so there's some kind of profit there.
So I think to correct and I apologize to Erik and anyone else, I think looking at it now, I think we just have three different distinct positions that make sense in regards to these issues regarding veteran legislation. One, the budget. Two, my position as far as the politicians themselves, just holding it back. And then Marco adds in the whole agenda thing that the hurry up and wait is mostly wait until all the numbers come out as far as how each big group gets their piece of the pie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I got the same issue here.
Yeah, I need to get one. I'm on my way. Probably once I finish this phase of my studies, I'll probably go get one because they're great.
Well, you mentioned at the very beginning about representation, and I think that's a very important thing too. You don't, like, I have certain needs. We all have basic human needs, and we all know that. But certain communities have certain needs that we're unaware of. And I don't think we have to have 10,000 different representatives for every single group. And how to identify those groups is another thing. But we do need to have everybody represented. I mean, we have women that need to be represented. We have men that have to be represented. We have different communities that need, to be represented. So I think that they all have to be brought to the forefront. And I can't speak on. I live very rural, so I don't have the same needs that somebody that is in an urban environment, and different ethnic groups too have different needs, and I can't speak on those because I'm not aware. I'm ignorant to that, and not that I don't want to know. I just don't know. So I think everybody has to have true representation within the system, and it has to be It has to be balanced.
Yes,
as well. To get everybody help.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. No, you are absolutely right. And as a matter of fact, I think I pissed off Mike Piazza the other night. Did you see me my little yeah. I wanted to go there, and my suit, man, I had just gotten this suit and I couldn't even get it like tailored. I was like, I don't care if I look like a sack of potatoes, I'm gonna go. It fit, but like the arm length did it. I was like, I don't care. But I went and hanging out with that guy, Mike Piazza is like very he's a very decent man, but more of, you know, kind of like center right. And many of my other friends in half the country, pretty much, you know, not half, but like a good contingency of the country, you know. The thing is that you know, he was just saying, you know, we were talking, and I just said, yeah, you know, this country has to, you know, has to be like sensitive and stuff. And he was just talking about his Italian American roots. Like, I didn't even know that his dad was like, he came from Italy, like with pretty much nothing. And he set up,
Mm.
so Mike Piazza was like wealthy before he joined the majors.
Oh,
And yeah, he was like, his father had a multi-million dollar company.
mm,
I've forgotten in what uh trade, but he was wealthy. His family was wealthy, but he had to go through I guess through the minors. He even had to play like in Mexico to have his break, because the way baseball works, and I know this because my sister went to University of Michigan, and I don't know if you remember the guy who Tom Brady replaced. He was supposed to play for the Yankees. I forgot his name, but he had to go through the farm system. So like in baseball, no matter what school you go to, what college you go to, what how much money your family has, it's really hard to get into the major leagues, you know, with all the different tryouts and stuff. And they want you to go through the whole system. But Mike Piazza was saying that he like played Mexico semi-pro ball, like, or whatever, their farm league took him to Mexico at times to play, you know. And then he's just like, you know, I just kind of kept at it, and you know, I got my opportunity. But you know, he was just trying to say basically what you were saying about representation. You know, he just feared, and it's a natural fear that, you know, certain people are going to run over agendas and not have their group representative. No matter what group you were in, you you know, there's always going to be some type of favoritism. But can we do like what you're saying, that everyone can get that type of representation? I'll shut up about that now, but it'd be interesting to talk about that, just because we lived through it in the military. Mike is very gung-ho on the military, positive in a way, but much like I wasn't a major league baseball player, but I know like he had to deal with like race dynamics, and like like we all had to deal with it in the military. But I just felt like, you know, not that things are colorblind, but that you just do your best to try to look at people for who they are. You know, I don't care. I mean, there were Latinos, there were Asian guys I didn't get along with in the military. You know, I'm part of both. You know what I mean?
right.
Just to be honest with you, you know, there were guys that I just didn't trust, that were part of my own ethnic tribe, or there were dirtbags or whatever. You know, so
Mm.
I mean,
Go ahead, Marco. Are you going to say something?
Yeah, the current social climate and all this direction, I think is I'm not in agreement with it. I think it's getting out of hand. I have kids, and I'm just, going back to the military. You know how we were represented? First squad, second squad, third squad. Those 13 guys, whatever they look like, whatever color, whatever ethnic background, there's a one person that spoke for the whole group, and everybody, they spoke about concerns. So if you have, yeah, definitely representation is necessary for whatever different groups and different agendas you have, or whatever your concerns are. And if you put confidence in somebody's going to speak on your behalf, they don't need to look like you or identify as you or be a they, he, whatever, and like the same kind of music, as long as they're speaking to your concerns. That's what I represent. I thought that's what the country was formed based off of. Not that every single, we can have like 6,000, millions and millions and millions of representatives, because nobody's going to be heard at the end of the day.
Right. And that's what
and so, right. So there's something that I said in my video essay or audio essay regarding Dakota Meyer, and that is that we are to evaluate our circumstances and our outcomes, and also to look at culture and to look at the rules and regs, that these are things my professor, James Toner, one of the biggest military ethicists, I studied with him back in the 80s, but that's what he said. He said the military needs, to look at virtue and to have like some type of evaluation. And if any of you all are copying my academic uh, uh, positioning here, know that this is intellectual property, but that we discuss. And you should reference this show and all of us, as well as Dr. James Toner. The thing is that, what do you think about that? I mean, I think you're right. Like, when does it end? And I'm not trying to, I'm much more progressive in everything. And that's, I was actually sharing that with Mike Piazza. And he kind of bought into it, because what our evaluation has to, in the end, that's where Toner, that's where it stops, right? It's like, are you producing? Are you holding the unit down? I know that at times I held my unit down. I can honestly say that. I was a 40-year-old, the last time I was in the military, 40-year-old, not, just thrown in to things and then after some time, I really came out, and performed. But I knew, where I was lacking and what I needed to do to get to where I needed to be as far as to perform,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't use age or whatever, because you can't get a break in war,
Right.
and that's what we're dealing with, that the civilian society, I don't feel, understands.
That was a big problem for me when I got out. Was a lot of number one, I didn't know how to handle dealing with civilians because they were very sensitive, and I was just there to get a job done. And they also didn't know how to deal with me. So we have to represent.
You could speak louder. You're a little.
I'm sorry. So what I was saying was, I didn't know how to deal with civilians after 20 years in the military, because I was there to get a job done, and other people didn't. They didn't know how to deal with me, and me being so blunt and aggressive, and I don't want to hear, that, oh, you stubbed your toe and having a hard day. Let's just get stuff done, And so we need to represent ourselves well, and we have to make sure that whoever we choose to represent us represents us well. And like
that issue of evaluation, do you think that, like what Marco was saying, first squad, second squad, third squad, like you're getting called up, you're up, you've got to, and what my professor was saying, that we need to recognize a certain standard, and no matter what, the standard has to be like looked at, and its outcomes, and whether you're an officer or not, or this group or not, it has to, there's a universal standard, because we're involved in the life and death game.
Sure, and that's hard to change when you get out. But yeah, there's
I don't
no
think
matter.
what I'm saying is that in the military, there were times, I mean, you were in special operations command, so you saw it in the culture, high level culture, but a regular leg unit like the 3rd Infantry, or actually the 3rd Infantry was pretty cool. The guys that I was with the 3rd and 101st, but I mean, just, I don't know, just any kind of like just unit that's not falling to standards, like, there's issues of like performance and outcomes and circumstances that have to be balanced, and I don't think commanders and NCOs or even privates are really like conscious of that, by and large.
No, I mean, well, there's a standard that, I mean, everybody's held to a standard no matter what we do. This is what's expected of you, and I don't know if it's not recognized, or if it's just not enforced enough, or if people think that it's okay not to meet those standards. And that's what I found in the civilian world, was people thought it was okay not to meet the standard. And that's what was so aggravating to me, was that there was a standard and it was supposed to be met, but nobody cared to meet it. And that's what was so frustrating for me. And I think, I mean, being an NCO and expecting things to be done, you know, I wasn't asking for a whole lot. And
I'm gonna come back to you because Marco's got to leave soon. What
Oh,
before I get back to you, save that thought, Marco. What can you say about that? And so one thing that I wanted to also mention to Erik is the standard, but also circumstances. So it's like, this is what my professor was saying. He was saying this is Western Aristotelian, even the legal system, medicine is all looked at that. And he's saying we should have a standard. We should also look at circumstances and balance things out. Like what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like, what works in the military and why that system works in the military is because it was a controlled environment, and there are repercussions when you went against the system. As a civilian, I think that game is just always changing. It's always changing. The rules are always changing. When somebody's not in agreement with something, all of a sudden now they're just not being represented, and they become, a different subgroup. And I think these problems are always evolving because they keep on changing. Everything's just very manipulated. It's hard to get everybody on the same page. You have this ever expanding like new demographics and new groups. It's as you can see, I'm choking for it. I'm very it really gets to me. I'm really just disillusioned with the way it's being handled and the way it's just being force fed to everybody, and just everybody's just accepting it as this is the way, and you just have to make room for it and adhere to it, or you're gonna get canceled.
The thing about it is that a lot of people too, like for example, Crenshaw, the Navy SEAL, he cancels. So it's like it operates. I look at it this way: it operates on our agenda. That's why I was like pointing out James Toner, because he's saying if those circumstances are reasonable and the performance is kept, then why shouldn't we? Then maybe it should be kept. I mean, it should be honored, or maybe, like he's saying that our society, just like you were saying, it's always going to be changing. There's always going to be issues, but then there's just like the empty things that the right is saying, and then the empty things that the left is saying, and there's just always going to be this fluff on all sides, and the military needs to recognize that we're focused on evaluation. That because we're in the life and death game, that we have to look at things very closely. So the case that I point out is, and again, I'm not, I am, I guess people can call me woke, but I don't even consider myself woke, but like whatever. Korean War, there was a black unit, even though it was so-called integrated, the missions, like towards the end of the war, that were very, very difficult. They didn't send clothing because there was a general, and I dated his granddaughter, not dated, we went on a couple dates or something, but like, he basically said, we're not sending those blacks any gear, and that's an ethical problem that involves circumstance, that where the standard, you have a group of soldiers willing to meet the standard, but they're not given the circumstances to complete the mission. And so that right there is like blatant, that's a major travesty. So representation, when you have like a group like that making such a powerful claim, we're in the life and death game, and there's just no excuse for that. Now, I'm not pushing for every little group or anything like that, but I don't know. I just like my professor because he's ultra conservative. He's if you look him up. His name is James Toner, and I did well in his course, knowing that I'm very liberal. But I just like his way because no matter what you have to deal with, no matter what situation you have to deal with, you have to evaluate each circumstance for what it is.
Yeah, but yeah, no, perfect world, ideally, yeah.
I think you're right about that in a ideal world. So it has its limits. Yeah, I think you have a good point.
That's the point. I know I'm not like against
No, I know you're not.
or anything. It's just I'm very cynical about it, and I feel all this is money driven. And it's an industrial complex, and it's I think war is a profit game, and it's a business, and military is, and almost everything is driven by money, and all this unfairness and fairness, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is who's going to profit, and they're the policy deciders, and they're the ones that silence, and they're the ones that allow things to happen or not things to come tear. You have your whistleblowers, but a lot of things have been brought to our attention, and they just as quick as they're brought to our attention, they just dissipate and nothing happens. And then some things do change. I always feel that I don't trust that there's not an agenda behind what does change and what doesn't. So
I can appreciate that point of view. So I know you have to go. I'm glad I gave you that that part to complete what I was saying because I wasn't being preachy. I was just kind of giving my perspective, and I was wanting to hear your perspective because I'm sure there are people who have perspectives who follow all of us here. So I'm glad you were able to join us and join us in the future when we do a show on veteran dads.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to meet you, Marco.
Anything else? Happy Veterans Day and happy Marine Corps.
Happy Veterans Day, the biggest holiday of the year.
Yep.
Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. All
right. Hoorah, Devil Dog. We won't hurt Erik on the way out.
Happy Veterans Day.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Yeah. So, Erik, I didn't let you finish what you were saying. And again, I'm giving a certain position. Part of it is I'm not using any of this for research, but it does help my mind. I don't make money off these shows, but I get the positive win-win, Stephen Covey win-win that, listeners get information from us, but at the same time, I get different thoughts from different people like you and Marco and others to reframe or continue my frame as I do my research that goes back to the 90s,
And I actually I lost track of what I was talking about.
No. It was a while, and it was a while because I got caught up with going into another topic, but it actually is a parallel to what you were saying, and that is that in the civilian world, okay, here's where it's connected. In the civilian world, there's a standard. I mean, there's a standard in the military world, but maybe not so much in the civilian world. And I wanted to get your input, and I'm not challenging you to change. So I wanted to ask you this. Do you feel, I'm going with what Professor Toner would say, and I think he would lean towards you to what you're saying, because I think in one book that he wrote, True Allegiance and True Faith, he writes, because that's part of like the officer's code or some oath or whatever, that you're going to give true allegiance and true faith in whatever, being an officer in the United States military. But what he's saying is that he doesn't think like the UCMJ is going to like exist because there's like a dying standard in our society. You know what I mean? And so, uh, you know, I get what he's saying. I don't know if he felt the whole UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's basically the code that sets the order for our professional lives in the military.
Mhm.
But what he's saying is like what you're saying. I guess, I'm going about it in indirect ways, but he's saying that there is a standard. There's a virtuous standard that we have to follow. But and then you get it, and then I get it, and civilians may not get it. But then I would say, how do you think circumstances? Because I've always seen you as someone who has like a level of empathy to recognize circumstances. Because the one guy, right? We didn't reach this topic as far as bad paper veterans, but
Mhm.
he was drummed out of the army, right? And some people
Yeah,
would say, hey, he didn't meet the standards, so he's out. And as a matter of fact, he ended up, I saw a lot of good people taken out, from the
sure.
military. And their circumstances weren't looked at. I guess
Right.
that's what I'm trying to say. And I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts in how circumstances could be viewed upon along with like standards, whether it's civilian or military?
Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, no matter what we do, there's a certain standard. There's a moral standard. There's an ethical standard, and we all know what is good and what's bad. Whether we follow it or not is up to us. That's our own outlook on life. Well, I'm gonna follow the social norms or I'm not. And um, I feel that social norms are kind of being eroded right now, kind of on the same line as Marco was saying. We're trying to include everybody. If we just look at uh, the self-identifying or gender identification or whatever issues that as something that we look at in the world today, we're trying to be more inclusive to everybody. But when we do that, then those social norms start to erode. And I see it in the military. Regulations are eroding too. I don't think that we'll totally get rid of the UCMJ. I think it'll evolve just like everything else. Um, some offenses will go away, some will be added. Um, but like I see, like right now, I see soldiers that don't have to shave anymore. Well, there's a reason for that standard, and that standard is so that your protective masks fit properly and during a chemical attack. Now, do we see chemical weapons used in war? Yes, we do. Um, so when the shit hits the fan, as we say, and those chemicals are released, and you've got a beard and can't seal your mask, you're a dead man. So if you choose not to follow that social norm or that regulation, and you say, I want my beard, well, go ahead, have a beard. But when the chemicals come to rolling down the hill, just know that you're not going to be alive anymore. And that's what you have to accept as a consequence for trying to buck the system. And a lot of people, oh, I get shaving bumps. There's ways around that too. Not always, but sometimes. If you want to buck the system and you don't want to follow the regulation and you want to be an individual, then be an individual, but you're going to be a dead individual. That's my opinion. So we can let the system evolve. We can let social norms erode, but there's going to be a cost, and it may be to you as a person trying to buck the system. If you die on the battlefield and the left flank is left exposed, it might be a consequence that the whole unit pays for. We don't know until we hit that road, until we hit that bridge.
Yeah.
And that's just one fine example that I'm throwing in there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
and
it's
like what you said is right. I get that. I also would add on top of that, and that does not negate what you're saying. On the other extreme, much like this woman's grandfather, who was like, even to his deathbed, because I was doing oral history examinations, and I was saying, well, did he change his attitude? Until his dying day, they recorded like his voice. I'm not gonna. It's so embarrassing because he was a failure as a general. Like in World War II, he ran the 95th uh, infantry to the ground and led them to their death. And not many of them, but a good number of them, and then called them a bad unit. But it was his bad leadership. And then
Sure.
Korean War comes around, and then he's like, giving, Puerto Rican troops trouble. He's giving black troops trouble with equipment and all this kind of stuff. It's like people like that are cancers, and I'm saying, what I'm saying is, okay, you have a perfect point about those social norms corroding, and you're gonna expose people, and that's something bad. And I get what you're saying, and I'm glad, I'm having a conversation with you. But then on the other end, you've got people that want to administer a military from the 1700s, where they're doing things that. So what if it's uncomfortable for you to be with someone that's not like you? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
That guy in that specific example that you're given, I agree with you 100%. That dude is cancer, and they should have booted him. They should have sent him home, because honestly, it when you join,
mention it because he's in American history, and if we learn from these mistakes, and I'm sorry if you're listening, you know, uh, and if it's not factual, correct me on it, but it's he ran the 95th Infantry to the ground, and he was harassing Puerto Rican soldiers, making them go on impossible missions, where the Puerto Rican soldiers basically said, "We're not going up. We're not going to take that hill because, first of all, there's like no protection, and it's a suicide mission, and it's an unlawful order." And that's the reality. And this guy was totally shaming them, and just he's just toxic. He like screwed up MacArthur, letting them know that, oh, you can just extend them, that those Chinese laundrymen, he told the troops, these Chinese laundrymen are you gonna let them beat you? And sure enough, hell, Mao sent those fucking troops in, and they're one of the most bloodiest times in American history were lost because of this guy, General Aldman. And you know, you've got to, I guess you and I are saying maybe there's got to be some type of middle ground where we have to like evaluate this kind of stuff.
well, there's and that's where I think, I don't know. I'm talking about meeting a standard, and I think yeah, and then there's this guy who created certain circumstances which didn't need to be there, and he was willing to flush people's lives down the toilet, for his own personal gain, maybe. And those are the people that we don't need in leadership. I've had run-ins with people who are racist against other soldiers because of their religion, or their skin color, and I wouldn't tolerate that shit. It's not. We're working together as a unit, as a team, and honestly, I mean, I consider other military members family. We have an objective, a mission, a goal in mind, and that's what we should be doing. But if there's a chance that you can accomplish the mission in another way without costing lives, not just, oh well, they're black troops or they're Puerto Ricans, or that's bullshit, dude. You can't do that, and that's, to me, that's it's criminal.
Right. And that's what the point. I love the example that you said, hey, do all you want with the social norms going down the hill, but you're gonna risk your life, and you're gonna risk the lives of other people. And I love how you said that, because it made me think of this guy, this General Almond guy, that, okay, you want to play these games because of your power, you're a general, right? Okay, great. you're a general. You're on Time magazine, Times Man of the Year or something. He got some type of award, and yet you're killing. You're responsible. You've got blood on your hands for allowing that flank, because that weakened symbolic flank, you did not provide the proper guidance that you were, told
Yeah.
to provide, and
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, it's okay. No, it's okay. But your example made me think of the other way that it can go. And
Oh,
so,
sure.
yeah,
Well, it's the greater good. The greater good has to
yeah,
be,
yeah. I think the professor said that. Yeah, the greater good. He said we have
you
to
know,
look for the greater good, for goodwill and the greater good.
yeah. And I mean, it's like when Rumsfeld was Secretary of Defense. I mean, his mission was to purchase land for the National Cemetery, and he was purchasing land
Oh, really?
in the National Cemetery right outside his office window, and all the soldiers that were dying on the battlefield because of his personal decisions on the war were being buried right outside his window. And so um, I don't know if he looked at it that way, if it was just a land purchase for burial grounds, or if he had personal responsibility for soldiers he was putting in harm's way. But they were buried. Everybody that died, it was his responsibility, and they were being buried right outside his office window. So he had some heavy weight on his shoulders. Whether he acknowledged it or not, I don't know. But everybody's decisions have consequences in life, and the standards we put in place have to be met for a certain reason. And the person in power isn't always right.
Right.
Let's put it that way. The general was definitely not right. And as president of the United States at that time, I would have relieved him for cause. I would have been like, "You're derelict. You're derelict right now. When you start saying things like that, you're derelict."
Yeah. And just like the over, I mean, I guess I respected, what's her name? You know, she was like the Navy SEAL who was like a trans. I mean, she wrote the book like after, and she came out after she retired, but she waited, and it's like there's a difference between doing that and like what you were saying, like people who just will do whatever they want and overlook a lot of, things that are tied to the standard,
And I'm all for, if somebody feels a certain way,
Yeah.
and they identify a certain way, I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. But don't do it for convenience. Do it for you.
Mhm.
Don't don't say, "Oh well, I get better benefits if I identify this way," or better benefits if I identify this way. You
Right.
identify for who you are.
Right. Right.
You know?
And how that's tied to uh where how much what again, like what you were saying about the standard, how that fits with the standard,
Mhm.
because there's just certain things that you just can't do, that it's
Yeah.
just like I can't go back into the military again because of my age, I
Yeah.
just can't go in, and that's the standard, even though I'd like to, but
Hmm.
I recognize, I mean, even when I went back at 40, I was thinking that was a mistake. I did compromise until I caught up with different things. I'm glad you're saying this. It really gives a good way to end. But it does make me think that, you know, I went back in the last time at age 40. What was I doing? Like going, like as a 40-year-old, that wasn't the 20-year-old, and they had standards, like you said. And I wanted to a certain extent, well, my circumstances, and they were cool about that. So the circumstances I worked with it as far as like I was going to have a little bit of extra time to work on learning radios more, in my spare time and doing certain things because when we were deployed, it was just it was real, and I get it. so you're making me think. But if I had the attitude like you're saying with the social, if I was completely stuck on my social norms, I wouldn't have been able to survive with my unit, because it would have, either fragged me or
Yeah.
got rid of me, or would have just let me uh to have some kind of fatal accident, but
Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah.
But
And I made my decision at 43 when I retired, and I was at 20 years, I was ready to retire. I had seen enough, done enough. But I had a physical disability. I had my heel amputated on my left foot, and they rebuilt my foot. And thank God I have all my parts, But physically, I couldn't meet the standard anymore, and I knew that. Instead of trying to hang on,
yeah,
and at 43 with a bad foot, I just said, hey, it's time to let the young folks take over. I can't, as much as I'd love to stay, I can't do it. And so I knew that I couldn't meet the standard, and I had to say goodbye. And
yeah,
I did. And it was bittersweet, because I loved my job and I loved what I did, but it was time to go.
yeah. And very similar to you, I said I can't, even when I got back up to the standard, because there was a 20-year break in service. Just to let
Mhm.
you know, 20 years when you're not involved, and then all of a sudden you're in, deployed. I was able to win the respect of my unit and everything in a very short period of time, and then they were wanting me to stay and all this, and I really appreciated them, but I knew that I couldn't remain in the military for that. It was done. It was my swan song, because even though
Yeah.
I had reached it, I couldn't sustain it, much like
Right.
you. And I was happy to let it go,
Yeah.
because I didn't want, like how you felt. You didn't want to drag others along,
Yeah.
potentially, if
And,
something.
and honestly, I love my troops. I really did. I mean, I was a staff sergeant, and I loved my job. I was an instructor at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and I loved being out in the field with my troops too. I mean, that was some of the best times of my life in the military.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, how can I have soldiers looking up to me as a leader when I can't meet the standard, you know? And I
Yeah.
just said, hey, yeah, you guys take the baton and run, because it's time for me to, take the side trail. I'm going to take the spider trail and kind of hang off in the woods.
Yeah. 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 Well, I really appreciated this, and Marco's presence. And so
Yeah.
thanks for being on here. And in December we're gonna do a thing on like vet dads. So
Okay.
join us. But I really liked how we were able to kind of go into this deeply, because a lot of vet shows won't kind of like get into this. We rolled around in the mud, and I think it's worth it, because I think folks need to understand the relationship between the civilian world and the veteran world and the military world, and how these things play out together, and what happens within the military, because it's a unique job. Like I said before, it's a calling, it's a job, and it's a life and death game, that
Yeah.
you use, the example
Sure.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks a
Well,
lot.
thank you for having me. And,
Yeah.
anytime you
Okay.
need me, I'm here for you. So give me
All
a
right.
holler. I
Yep.
was
Same.
last minute, but I got Zoom downloaded.
I Man, I really thank you for this, and have a great weekend. Say hi to your family for me. I'm sending something to your wife. Don't tell her, but
Okay.
just because you guys were so hospitable to me
Oh,
um, last time, and so yeah. Oh, how's your dad doing?
man, it's not a good situation right now. It's an uphill battle with him. He's got, I don't know whether it's Alzheimer's, dementia, or alcohol related brain damage.
Mhm.
Um, he's been an alcoholic for more than 50 years. We've got him sober now,
Yeah.
but his mental capacity is greatly diminished,
Mhm.
and he's fighting us every step of the way. We're working on mental evaluations with neurologists right now. And hopefully by the 29th of November, we'll have an answer whether he can live on his own or not. And if not, he'll be living with me. So one way or the other, he's going to be taken care of. He may not like this situation, but
You're a great son.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm doing my best to take care of him the best I can.
Yeah. Very admirable how you went to go retrieve him. And yeah, God bless him, and I'll keep him in my prayers. And we'll connect sooner than later. Okay, brother?
Okay, sounds good.
Right. Have a great Veterans Day.
Okay. You do the same.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Love you, brother.
All right. Love you too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Veteran Etc. invites you to join us again with your host, Mike Kim, every Sunday. If the content from this podcast is informative to you, please share the podcast with others. Give a like and/or post something you learned from the episode on social media. If interested in other truly informative podcasts like Veteran Etc., check out cominghomewell.com for a listing of other veteran-based podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.